I think this is a very interesting space to be talking about, and I had fears that this is quite a short presentation because much of what had to be said was said by David, which I think is great, and I didn't want to reiterate his slides. I have taken one of his slides, or an image, which is the pie chart, put that in the context of what I've called the demography of the construction sector, which is rather interesting, how we made up in terms of the fractionation of the number of people. And thinking about the sectors that need the skills, and having come from working in UK government just a few years ago, during a time when we were losing analysts hand over fist, and government departments have been really slimmed down, and yet now government departments are being asked to be very much more savvy concerning procurement against BIM. So again, I can envisage a time when there will be a need for teams within departments, those relevant procuring departments, to have experts of the highest quality to make sure that the public money is being spent correctly. So I think there's a very interesting span of areas where we need to develop skills. And obviously, speaking with my other hat on, and Guy kindly mentioned my role at UCL, so as Vice Dean of Engineering, I work with the Bartlett School as well quite closely. We have a perception of the current provision in the UK, which I'll talk about a bit later on. And we think it's very patchy. We think actually on the positive side there's a huge amount of opportunity. I mean, that's really the story for training providers. There's a real dearth at every level, and I'll try and unpack that. You'll see a couple of slides that you've seen from probably twice before, so I'm going to skip past those quite quickly, but one of them I think is contextually important. That one I'm going to go by. That is such a popular slide, isn't it? We should have a vote on that. So this was my unpacking of David's. So you've seen this picture before, but I use the ONS quite often to give data sets, and you do a little bit of sort of Pareto with a bit of spreadsheet, and you can start to see some interesting things. So this is the raw data, the employment in the construction sector in millions here, and then the size of the companies, and you can see it for yourself. You know, quite a large proportion of very small companies, and when I sorted those and then saw what percentage made up 50%, I think I've got here, you can see it's companies with less than 25 people. And when I was at CSA at Department of Communities and Local Government, we had a similar thing around low carbon homes, and the question of how do you reach those people who are very, very active, very streetwise, they know exactly what they're doing, but they've got absolutely no time to train and upskill, or they believe they haven't, and they don't necessarily see it as a vitally important thing to do. And I think at the time there were discussions like, for example, certain, I think it was actually B&Q, were offering to put DVDs on their checkouts, for example, so that people could actually just take that away and look at it, stuff in the lunch hour. But it does need a concerted effort, and BIM Level 2 and beyond is more complex than that. You need an in-depth and a structured way of learning it. But I thought that was just a useful thing to get on board, really. This is a real issue. These are real numbers from 2014, and these are the people we need to deal with. And if you then take out the big corporates at the end who employ a lot of people, but actually they've got the in-house training capability, they've got the real business need to train, then you start to get a better appreciation that actually it's more than the 50% problem that we've got. And reaching those people through the appropriate mechanisms requires the training providers to design particular interventions, and distance learning is one of those, actually, which is, I think, will be very, very important to look at. Again, we've seen this before, but actually what are we talking about here? If we take training really seriously, we need to be giving practitioner knowledge here that enables people to engage in the level 2 supply chain effectively, efficiently, and to the expectations of the tier 1 contractors. But we also need to be giving a little bit of visibility of what can be done a little bit further than that as well. So for executives, an awareness of where the whole thing is going and whether value accretion is going to take place as we move further forward in development. Again, looking at that timeline picture that I showed before, and I developed this later on in this brief talk, actually where are we going then from this, and what are the real needs to be thinking about in the future in training and in research? Because we mustn't put that to one side. We're not going to expect BIM research to be going on in companies that are actually using the tools. And so where are the policy options for government being developed? And it's going to be in universities and in similar places. So looking at here, we've got kind of this area in question. There'll be an intensive need for training, but then a continuing need, I think, as we go on. And just this week, I had conversations with a major consulting company who are looking for BIM training. You know, it's very, very hard to procure in the marketplace at the moment. Again, we're looking here currently around capital delivery and then the whole picture later on. I'm, as you know, very concerned in security. Where are we training that? I mean, that's something we really need to look at very carefully, because we need to deal with it in advance of the project and not at the end. So the perceived, these are the original slides, to me I mean. So looking at David's picture here, these are the people I think we need to be thinking about. So the educators, the systems designers, the technical strategists, the tool architects, the CAD people, and then the new breed, if you like, of tool makers who are going to be beyond CAD into integrated data management, big data, analytics and so on, and the integration with live data processing as well. Then the program specifiers and managers, team managers, and then the practitioners are actually doing the work, if you like, in the design offices, out on site, managing the projects. And we saw this before. So there's a real overestimation, I think, here, that people think, no, we already have relevant experience. I think when they really get down to level 2 projects, there'll be a bit of a gap. Maybe half of those people will find they do need further training. I tried to map the whole question into this sort of pyramid of thinking, because as an educator from a major university, we're interested in, I guess, the sort of top bits of that, because that's where our job is, in original technical research and in publications and in people, generating people trained in those levels. So the value, I suppose, to universities is probably around here. So master's training is going to be a very big deal for universities going forward. Companies will be paying for their own staff to go through that training, and I think it will overlap, in fact, with CPD. So it may be possible to procure bits of master's courses that actually provide quantum jumps in understanding of BIM, which will be very valuable. Short courses and CPD are, however, probably the biggest piece, which universities won't play centrally in, and where training providers, and I have to say, being a BRE person, BRE is at the moment, the leading, I think, provider in this area with its academy work and so on, and being so close to BIM practice within the company makes it a very important thing. And then a number of people working on doctoral training, and one of my colleagues visiting UCL at the moment is in the audience, and several other people doing some very interesting work. Some of the work that I've looked at, I referred to Beth Morgan's work earlier on around the social and corporate adoption of BIM. It's not just about technical aspects, it's about behaviours, it's about what happens when the supply chain is more joined up. I came from the semiconductor world where the supply chain was joined up, and unless marketplace competitors collaborated, then nobody had enough money to do the business. If you want to actually have a new Pentium chip, then you have to have sharing of knowledge across a number of different competitive companies in order to get there. That hasn't happened in the construction sector. The other areas, I guess, where that sort of behavioural thinking has gone on is in integrated project insurance, where there's a pay and share, gain share. I'm not sure how far down the road that's got, but certainly I had some involvement in that, and I think BIM could be a promoter of it. So looking at the same pyramid, who's actually doing it? And I've talked a little bit about this. Universities principally supporting doctoral students, but actually for master's training, universities with training companies and RTOs, I think modern thinking, and I think there's innovation in process to be looked at here, is to have a much closer collaboration between universities and training providers. So RTOs, research technology organisations, places like MPL, TWI, and of course BRE, working together. The major value for investment is in the sort of modules of undergraduate courses and master's training which overlap. And then in the short courses and CPD world, where there's sort of learning by increment, if you like, and learning in lunchtime or distance learning, there's a real place for the professional engineering institutions as well, where the civil engineering and say my own institution, the engineering technology institution, have got developing capability in distance learning and would like to partner, I think, with people. This is going to be a very big market. It's interesting, in the technical world, a business study that was done for my university across all technical CPD, and not just built environment, was 600 million, and that's just at the moment. The value of that marketplace is very, very big. So I'm probably going to be a bit partial here, because I did take soundings on this, and I use my own information as well. So the current BIM training providers, so schools of architecture, where those exist, and there are many of them, typically provide some sort of awareness training of BIM. And the Bartlett doesn't actually train BIM. Now, Tim might shake his head, but this is from the Dean. But it does a lot of work around 3D CAD and advanced design. And where people gain knowledge in the Bartlett School, it's via secondments into industry. And so that's the way. So we need to sort of turn that around a little bit, so we're providing the training for those industry people as well. There is a fair amount of doctoral training going on. I mentioned that earlier on. So it's very much a live area. We're very interested in the social and technical interchange there. And CASA, the Centre for Advanced Spatial Analysis, which has done a lot of work so under Sir Alan Wilson and now Andy Hudson-Smith, looking at going beyond BIM into sort of cities design, if you like, in a hierarchical way as well. So the master's level providers, and forgive me for those who I've missed out, but I did note that Birmingham City and Reading, of course, I've got good links into Reading. I know there are doctorates there, but I'm not sure whether there's a master's course. I think some of the Salford academics went to Middlesex, and I think there's work going on there as well. And then we've got the UCL people that I can speak authoritatively with, and of course the training providers, last but not least, are very active. But there aren't very many of them, in fact, and that's probably where the majority of the needs lie. Plus the fact that I think there's going to be a link across here that there's a real opportunity for joint delivery of master's level courses. So what are the future needs? So currently 64% of the respondents say sufficient, but does this really factor in the future requirements? Does it factor in the understanding of what level 2 really means? 34% said their organisation's level 2 ready, really? 54% fine-tuning. I wonder what sins are hidden under that heading. And what about the depth and the breadth of the training? Do respondents count operator training from CAD providers as sufficient? I think that's an interesting question, isn't it? You know, if you've gone on a CAD course, are you BIM ready? I'll leave that one open. Changing behaviours, I think really interesting. Getting the full value from BIM is about people. It's not just about techniques, methodologies. How have we got the culture change going? Will it be self-sustaining and actually roll forward of its own accord, or does it need to be taught? And then maintaining awareness of developing trends and opportunities. And I think my last slide, which isn't quite yet, talks a little bit about that. I think we need to look at design and engineering from a total system viewpoint, so that the requirements, the employer requirements, I think is a very good step forward to that, but actually how do you share and visualize what you're going to get with the client, and how do you train people to operate that way? Open development environments, I think we need to make sure are emphasized, culture change, and then what I've called BIM hygiene issues to make sure that we get proper value out of reuse. There's some very good examples I think we had from Ministry of Justice where the modularisation is exactly what should be happening. There's no doubt about that. But it's so easy, I think, when you get a new project, let's just generate a load of new models, which is not what BIM's about. And of course, for senior management, that will give it a very bad name. So we need that practice to be understood. Ensuring cybersecurity from the start, I have to reiterate, make sure we understand BIM level, PAS 1192 Part 5, because procurers in government will be looking at that fulfilment as well. And then looking at how to achieve this total expenditure model with particularly the smart FM benefits and digital built Britain as we move forward. And I noted that Terry mentioned level 4, so that's really where we're looking at the social benefits, not just operational benefits, but making environments that promote well-being and productivity. You know, if we get a sort of 0.1% productivity increase in a typical commercial office environment, that's worth millions of pounds. Really good. And if we can sell that as the UK, we'd be doing very, very well. So this was my last slide. So I kind of thought I'd increment forward in time and take a bit of a punt on some of the things we need to be thinking about. And this is just my view. So integration with real-time design data and analysis tools, that's my personal professional interest, that's my background in real-time control. Integration with a full range of spatial information from districts to cities. So this is the GIS picture, breaking down the barriers between district planning right down to building planning. The integration with design for behavioural outcomes, which is very much a BIM level 4, whatever we're going to call that. I called it digital built BIM plus here. How do we actually get that there? And who are the partners there? You know, is Public Health England one of the partners there? Very interesting thought. BIM CAM methodologies for off-site manufacture and on-site automated assembly. So coming from one of my backgrounds in a precision manufacturing world, we were very much interested in this. So you're going from a complex information model, it wasn't buildings, it was machinery, right down into machining real parts and then putting them together automatically. So all that's defined at the front end of the process. Where do we go from there? You know, by that time we've got almost robotic sites. We're building dwellings in 3 days through additive manufacture by writing concrete, all this sort of thing. And then on the business opportunity side, which is the green parts here, aiming eventually for this holistic design and operate service, rather like the Rolls-Royce model I mentioned earlier on. I mean, it sounds suspiciously like PPI, but does that need to be reinvented and future-proofed and made safe? That's my overall picture. I hope I've given some more food for thought. Oh, right. I thought that was my last slide. So there is a role for buildingSMART. As me, I was sort of so worried about not having enough material here. Opening collaborative development, these are very similar things, but this is, I guess, the main thing, isn't it? Promoting the qualification of people, software tools, and projects. So right across the patch, we want to have an input in a vendor-independent way on people, tools, and projects, working with training providers, working to develop syllabuses, maybe some of them standardised so you know what you're getting wherever you go, and becoming a trusted resource and partner for government and industry. Thank you.